Welcome to Earth Chats. In this show, we chat to leaders, influencers, and organizations who are passionate about making our Earth a better place. We are all aware of the dangers of pollution and how global climate change could impact our lives. Join us and listen to the conversation where leaders in making our world better will share their stories, advice, and opinions. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram TV, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to join us and let's take hands to save our planet and make our world a better place. Good day, everyone. Today I'm talking to Professor Ray Jansen. Ray is the head of Pangolin Working Group in South Africa. Welcome, Ray, to Earth Chats.
Thanks very much, Will. Great to be on board.
So, Ray, give us some background about yourself and how you became involved with environmental and earth sciences.
Yeah, that's my day job at Tshwane University of Technology, where I'm in the Faculty of Sciences in the Department of Environmental, Water and Earth Sciences. And but my research capacity, I deal with a number of projects on the side, focusing on various species. But one of the main groups of organisms we work on is the Pholidota, which is the pangolins.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, I saw that you are the chairman of the African Pangolin Working Group. So can you tell us a bit more about the history and the workings of the group, and maybe a bit about the pangolins themselves? I was amazed. I read a bit on your website, and I was amazed to see all these things. And I just know them as anteaters. So it would be fascinating to hear a bit more.
Yeah, they're fascinating creatures. Evolution goes back, 85 million years, where they originated in the supercontinent Pangaea in what is now North America, and then evolved up into Europe. And the first fossil pangolins were found in what is now Germany, which gave rise to the 4 Asian species of pangolins. And about 40 million years ago, the Asian species gave rise to the 4 African species of pangolins. They're the only mammal covered in hard, overlapping keratinous scales. They've got no real movable jaws. They've got no teeth. They've got a tongue almost as long as their bodies. And they're mostly nocturnal and feed specifically on ants and termites. So they're completely unique. And what makes them even more unique is they evolved from a common ancestor, which was more like a cat, of the carnivore family, which is bizarre. Yeah.
So how did you get? How did you get interested in this species yourself?
Well, I'm actually an ornithologist. I study birds, but in 2009, one of my students, because I used to be a teacher for my sons, and one of my matric biology students looked me up and said, "Look, my parents are looking after a game farm in the Kalahari, which has got a decent population of Temminck's ground pangolins, and I'd love to do my postgraduate research on pangolins." And he said, "Well, would you supervise my project?" And I said, "Absolutely. I've never even seen one." And that was a whole opening of a new world, a new realm of pangolins. And not long after that, realizing that they're the most traded mammals on Earth, and all 8 species are threatened with extinction. And the rest is history. It's more than a decade ago.
Well, that's amazing. You know what? That's amazing. The most traded animals on Earth. So, what are the major threats to pangolins?
Yeah, just a correction here. Not the most traded animals, the most traded mammals. There are other animals in numbers like shark fin, perlemoen, eels that are traded in vast more numbers, but certainly the most traded mammals on Earth, and mostly sought after for their meat as a delicacy in countries such as Vietnam, but probably more so for their scales to be used in cultural and traditional practices in Asian countries such as Malaysia, Vietnam, but very more specifically in China, where their scales are used in vast numbers, where they're ground into powder and they form part of a a remedy in cultural medicine practices, or used for spiritual practices to cure certain ailments or certain belief systems in Asia.
Oh my word! So the African Work Group was formed as basically as to protect the species, right?
Yeah, remember they're not a species; they're an entire order. You've got 8 species.
Okay.
So the African Pangolin Working Group was established in 2011. It was the first non-profit organization that had a focus, the hands-on focus, working with live animals and working with pangolins in specifically, the first one in the world established in 2011, where our focus is on the 4 African species. We did that on purpose because we couldn't focus on all 8 species. It will just be too much. And our work involves retrieving them out of the illegal wildlife trade in South Africa, assisting other African countries in retrieving them out of the trade, and also in their rehabilitation and their release, as well as their post-release monitoring. So we work very closely with law enforcement, with government, with police, and also with the judiciary and the National Prosecuting Authority. And then also in the education of how to work with pangolins, to veterinary surgeons, to farmers, to rehabilitation organizations, to government officials, and also educational initiatives to the youth. So we are operational on multiple levels.
I can see that. So I suppose that rehabilitation of animals is also extremely important on your side.
Yeah, look, I mean, once you've pulled these animals out the trade, they're all severely compromised, both mentally and physically, and it involves a whole process of getting them back into the wild, and actually their psychological trauma is quite important as well. So it can take a number of months to actually rehabilitate them, and we follow them post-release for even up to a year. So the process is quite intense, and it involves every single one where we put telemetry transmitters onto them and satellite
I was
tags.
wondering how you actually put those transmitters on.
Yeah, their scales are very hard. You know, it's like it's made out of keratin, like our nails and our hair, but they're as hard as rhino horn. So you can actually get a 4 millimeter wood drill bit and actually drill through the scale, and it's bolted onto the scale. One VHF transmitter, which is a very high frequency transmitter for close monitoring, and then also a satellite transmitter that you can pick up on your phone anywhere in the world to have a look at general movement patterns. And that it's quite expensive technology, but it's absolutely crucial to monitor these animals.
It must also be fascinating. I saw the other day that somebody was they had a sea turtle that they monitored that was swimming 45 kilometers a day. So, do these animals move
Yeah.
in vast areas, or are they range bound? How do they operate?
Yeah, they can cover up to 10 kilometers in one night. They
Wow.
don't really run. They just sort of put their head down and walk off. You know, the Temminck's pangolin is the most southern species of African pangolin, but it's the only one that's bipedal. In other words, it walks on its back legs. The others are all quadrupedal and walk on all 4 legs. But the little Temminck's pangolin can cover 10, 12 kilometers in a night, and the VHF transmitter can only pick up about 3 kilometers. So if they walk over 3 kilometers, you're going to lose them pretty quickly. So hence then comes the satellite transmitter into play,
Ah.
and then we can work out exactly where they are. So if they've walked, 10, 12 kilometers and we've lost the signal, we can pick them up with a satellite tag, and we can get their general location and pick up their VHF signal again. So we've got historical movement patterns of 200-300 kilometers over a few months. So they can cover reasonably vast distances, but it's saying that they highly territorial, sedentary, solitary species. So the males are territorial. They live in about sort of 5 to 10 square kilometer territories, and they don't travel very far from that. But when we release animals, we have found that they can travel quite vast distances to set up their own home ranges.
That's amazing. I see that you have on your website a space where the public can actually record pangolin sightings. Does this help you in? This obviously helps you in your research and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's not just for research. It's vastly important to determine current population distribution, as well as frequency of sightings. So if we get more frequent sightings in an area, it gives us an indication that the population is reasonably healthy and reasonably active. So those sort of public sightings are really, really important. And we can calculate from that how the population has shrunk over a certain period of time, or for that matter, it may be growing to a certain extent. And those sighting data are held highly confidential. So if the public give us a GPS coordinate or latitude and longitude, we don't share that information, and it's held in the strictest of secrecy, because pangolins are now so wanted in the illegal wildlife trade that their scales, which are ground down into powder, are actually sold per gram per US dollar. So it's very close to nearing what rhino horn is currently, and the demand for pangolin scales is much more than rhino horn or ivory or tiger bone or lion bone or perlemoen all combined. So the demand for pangolin scales is really, really big, and the money they can make off it is a vast amount of money. So we don't give off the location of when we have a pangolin in our possession, or if we receive a location from the public. We don't make that common knowledge.
Well, that's amazing. I think anti-poaching is such a major issue. So I saw there that you've got a canine anti-poaching program, which sounds quite exciting. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we've got the first canine unit that's dedicated entirely to combating pangolin poaching. So we've got our own counter poaching unit, 2 members of staff, headed up by Glenn and Annika's the canine dog unit handler. And then we've got 1 Belgian Malinois cross shepherd dog that's trained on the scent of all 4 species of African pangolin. So this dog has the capability of detecting pangolin scales, all live pangolins in the trade, whether they're in containers, suitcases, vehicles, buildings, or whatever. Havoc is now trained to sniff out any pangolin-related contraband, and so that's their purpose. Although that unit also helps us in transporting pangolins to release sites and assisting law enforcement with various operations. So they're all kind of multifaceted in that role.
Oh, that's awesome. I think the main thing with this, obviously, a big issue for you guys are awareness, right? I mean, that's where the rhinos and stuff like that, because they're big animals, there's a lot of awareness around them and they're poaching. And how do you actually, I mean, first of all, you're doing a lot of research, which is important aspect of your work, but also getting the story out to the public and awareness about the importance of pangolins and to actually, combat poaching and to save them. How do you go about that?
Yeah, it's we've got a marvelous tool at our disposal at the moment with social media and social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and public sharing and liking and talking about it. It's hugely important, and the role the public plays in spreading the awareness of the pangolins are currently in. And it's difficult, for the public to sort of grasp the importance of what's going on is somewhat a challenge, because 99% of the global public has never even seen a live pangolin and probably will never see a live pangolin. Whereas you can possibly see an Asian rhino in a zoo somewhere, or an African black rhino or white rhino in a zoo somewhere, and they're highly visible if you visit some of the parks and stuff. But pangolins are certainly not so visible. So we have a number of challenges that other conservation organizations that focus on specific species, whether it's lion or giraffe or rhino or elephant or whatever it happens to be as an endangered species. We don't have the privilege of showcasing pangolins to the world in terms of live exhibits. We showcase what we do and the photographs we have and the sting operations we work on, and to get the message out to the public. So one of our huge sort of tools in the trade are the social media, and it really works well. In particular, with the youth and spreading awareness amongst their friends and schools, and it's hugely important. And that's what we're trying to focus on. But we're a very small group. There are only 4 of our members of board, and we've got the 2 counter poaching members of staff. But we try what we can with what we have available to the best of our ability.
Apologies for the short interruption, but I do need to mention something. We really need to raise awareness about the dangers facing our environment. The Earth Chat podcast was started as a campaign to bring people together to save and protect our planet for generations to come. To make it easier for everyone to access our content and the advice shared by leaders in our mission for a better world, we have created a new website where you can access all our shows and featured articles. Visit us today on earthchats.bitmedia24.com, where you will find loads of interesting and insightful information, as well as tips and ideas of how you can participate in our mission of a better Earth. Here is that link again, earthchats.bitmedia24.com. Now, on with the show. You guys are obviously dedicated. So another thing that I noticed that you have you're having a conference at the Kruger Park. It's called the Second International Pangolin Conference. Is this this is going to be in September? Is this still going to go ahead though?
Well, no, I don't think it's going to happen. So tomorrow we're going to release a press statement that we can have electronic meeting or whatever, but it's just not the same to get the world's most formidable, best pangolin conservationists from around the world in one place is no easy task, and it's no cheap task either. So it requires planning and booking flights and all sorts of things like visas and that. And to have it in one of the most fantastic venues in the world, which is natural pangolin habitat to the Temminck's pangolin in Skukuza in the Kruger Park, is just an absolute bonus. So we're going to be postponing that until September 2021. And, we've got scientists coming from Canada, United States, Australia, Malaysia, Vietnam, China, many countries in Europe, such as the UK, and other countries such as Holland and Switzerland. Lots of people doing fantastic work on pangolins all over the world coming through to this conference. And if one country, for example, the United States, has got a huge COVID-19 pandemic problem at the moment, I seriously doubt that international flights will be, they may be available, but I don't know if they'll be safe enough to travel. So I think it's safer just to postpone it by one more year and get everybody on board in Skukuza camp in September next year.
I think that is the right decision. I mean, everybody I talk to basically following the same thing, right? And I think now that we're talking about the coronavirus, it's impacting all of us, and all organizations, and yourself as an NPO need to rethink their models. And do you have any ideas or changes in mind in that area, that new things that you're doing to get more awareness out, and in your what was it call it, post-COVID world?
Yeah, the SARS virus has actually been a double-edged sword, because there's been a lot of blame that's been given to pangolins as being the intermediate host, passing on COVID-19 from its host species, which is probably a horseshoe bat in Asia, passing it on to an Asian pangolin in a wet market, which happens to be Wuhan. Although there's a lot of speculation about what the intermediate host actually was or is, pangolins have come into the lounges of everybody around the world that, this may have been contracted from an Asian pangolin, the most traded group of mammal in the world, having a sort of a revenge on the human race. But, we don't know what the intermediate species was. In the 2002-2003 SARS outbreak in Asia, it was an Asian civet. In the 2012 outbreak in Saudi Arabia, it was a camel. So to have the intermediate host, we don't know what it is. But in the same note, it's brought pangolins to the spotlight and created global awareness for the plight of pangolins and the extinction crisis all 8 species may follow. I think, we're going to release a press statement soon that we need to start utilizing our natural resources better to the safety and health of humans, but also to the well-being of global biodiversity. So we cannot utilize predators as a source of food because cats, dogs, pangolins, civets, and even omnivores such as primates and other omnivores and carnivores such as bats have been well known to transmit um, pathogenic viruses and bacteria to multiple host species and including humans. Ebola, AIDS, and many respiratory viruses in the past have been contracted from bushmeat markets in Africa and what they call wet markets in Asia. So people need to take note of that and to utilize maybe other species less and steer away from key species such as carnivores and certain omnivore species, which are renowned for transmitting zoonotic diseases. And I think post-COVID, that will be a huge movement forward for multiple wildlife nonprofit organizations, as well as multiple governments throughout Asia and Africa that would have to put some sort of regulation in place in terms of education in rural communities of what is safe, and also education in rural communities of what species are suffering to the extent that they may bear an extinction crisis.
Well, this is so. What you're saying is there's always there might be actually some positive coming from this, which is great to hear, right? That is wonderful. So, Ray, also people at home. I mean, pangolins are very cute animals, and I think when people get to know them and see more of them, people would love to get involved. So, how can people get involved and contribute or donate? How can they do this?
Yeah, we've got so many well-wishers of people who'd like to come over and work with pangolins and assist us. It's just so difficult now that they are so sought after in organized crime that it's a huge risk, not only for the volunteers that want to come and help us, but also for the pangolins in a re-poaching event. So it's not always possible. And in fact, it is almost impossible to put that ball in motion. But what we always say is just spread awareness, and global awareness is fantastic. An ant is not a very powerful organism, but the entire nest is just absolutely formidable. So if we've got this huge global movement with people all over the world supporting pangolins and spreading awareness, that on its own is just absolutely phenomenal. So that's the biggest thing that the public can do. They're very welcome to visit our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, African Pangolin Working Group. I've recently started a Twitter feed, which is still young, also African Pangolin Working Group. I'm on Instagram, called African Pangolin Conservation, just one word. And then we do have our website. If you just Google African Pangolin Working Group, you'll find it. Our banking details are all up there. We have SnapScan. Our PayPal is down at the moment, so we're busy working on that. They wanted to verify that I actually exist as a true person, and so we're busy working on that at the moment. But I think to anybody out there, just like our pages and share comments and network with us. The board all run our own social media feeds, so we don't employ people to run them for us. We're at the end of every single one of those. I'm at the end of the Instagram one. I think that's how you hooked up with me, Will.
That's correct.
Yeah, my executive director, Nikki Wright, is at the other end of the Facebook page. I'm at the other end of the Twitter page. So we're actually on it ourselves. We don't pass the buck. We don't employ somebody to do it. We do it ourselves. If people have questions, comments, whatever, we work with everyone as quickly as we can. But I think it's important to also be in touch with the global community in terms of awareness. And you may just reach one young person that can have a huge impact, maybe not immediately, but in the future, towards the conservation of the Pholiodota.
That's very, very true. And yeah, we'll definitely put all the links and everything in the description here. So, Ray, yeah, that's great. So, my last question for you is: if you have one message for somebody at home about environment in general and how they can make a difference from your experience, what would that be?
try to make I don't want to make a huge long statement, but I think I'm not a very religious person, but I just got huge respect for those Buddha people. They sweep the path in front of them where every little ant is swept out of harm's way. It's obviously something we can't all do, and we need to utilize our environment sustainably, not utilize it. I think it's important to utilize it, but just bear in mind that little things have all got a part to play in the bigger picture of the only planet we know is home. And I mean, bees alone are responsible for pollinating more than 70% of the world's foodstuffs, and we're taking them out with insecticides and pesticides. Just awareness of all the little things that you need to have around for future generations, and the generations that will also conserve nature and the well-being of all organisms on our planet. And I think just this awareness, and if you just save one, at least it's one less that has been saved and has the right to life like everything else does.
I like that, respect for life. Right, that was very, very insightful, and thank you for spending the time. I know you're busy. You were telling me before we started that you had a pangolin pregnancy emergency. So that was great to hear that you guys are on the ball, every day. And thank you for spending the time and visiting with us and talking to our listeners. I think they will find this insightful. Thank you for listening to today's show. We are grateful for everyone listening to our podcast and appreciate your interest in saving our planet. Please be sure to subscribe and follow us on the links below. It would also be extremely helpful if you could share the show and all your links with your friends and family. Bless all of you and bless our earth.